Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto x Shalltear x Narberal x Evileye? Part 3. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Narberal hates me. In all fairness, I'm not entirely sure why she does. It's not as though I did anything untoward to tick her off. I've been nice. I've been polite. Heck, I've deliberately kept the tacit teasing and preposterous pranks down to a minimum. And that's a lot, given my class. She just, quite literally, hates my guts. Thankfully, Archie seems to be getting along with Mamangines just fine. She sends back regular reports via message, and I don't believe for an instant Nabe isn't doing the same for me. It's classic give and take. Such was part of the reason why I suggested this little mix-up in the first place. Sure, we can claim that we're working together, even be friends, but at the end of the day we're both players. Any intelligence Narberal gleans on me is going right back to her boss, and the same applies for Archie. Ah, the glory of intelligence gathering and cat chasing. Reminds me of my first life. Good times, happier times, simpler times. I've come a long way from that dense dullard, haven't I? But back to my entry. I know, honesty is the best policy, but sometimes dishonesty works just as well. Case in point. Thanks to our little ruse, we recently encountered a curious little adventuring group known as the Swords of Darkness and gotten ourselves roped into a job with them. They seem like a balanced party. I've noted their names and classes. Ninja Mage, Peter Mock Warrior, Luckrut Volve Ranger, Dinewood Wonder Druid. Friendly lot. From what I've seen of them thus far, they work together well. Not sure why one of them is pretending to be a boy, but hey, I don't judge. Ninja do as Ninja does. There's no fooling this nose, you know. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. It bothers me a lot. Not the disguise, it's a fairly decent one, but why she went to such lengths in the first place? Why is she hiding like that? Did something happen to her? Who is this sister of hers? Who's the bastard that snatched her up and took her away? I want to train her, I want to help her. My big brother instincts are screaming at me. Don't get me started on that talent of hers. It literally halves the time it would take for her to learn a magic spell. Do you have any idea how broken that is? Teach her the magical equivalent of shadow clones and BM. She could become as strong as this death. Maybe even Sasuke. I want to train her so damn bad. But how to go about it? Tempting as it might be, I don't want to poach her from Swords of Darkness. She's fond of those guys, even if they don't realize she's a girl. I could teach her, I guess. Thanks to this disguise, they think I'm just some 2-bit normal human with a copper plate, not a dark elf, which means they have no problems with little Elmi. You really don't see any dark elves in the cities, which leads me to think they're not well looked upon. I'll keep the disguise up a bit longer. Maybe drop a few hints and tips? Give Ninja a scroll or two? Would that be too much? I'll ask Obito. She owes me a favor after I got her and Ainz together. Huh. I felt a chill just now. Wonder what that was about. Probably nothing important. My skills would go off otherwise. Don't give me that sour look, you who reads this. That's a problem for future me. As for the name of our party, I chose it on a whim. What? I appreciate the classics. Guiding Moonlight. Because that felt like his responsibility, you know? To be a guide, mentor, someone to help the helpless, and beat up bullies. In any case, we've been asked to, or rather Mammon has been asked to guard some silly little pharmacist by the name of Nfiria Bear while he gathers and delivers herbs. Bastard dragged me into it before I could say no. I'm not one for fetch quests, but it gives us an excuse to visit Karn village, and a chance to check in on Enri and Ninu. Wonder if the kiddos used those horns yet. Still, so far so good. We haven't run into a single goblin or ogre, or anything really on our journey. That said, it kind of feels like everything going a little too smoothly. And you know what they say about lightning? It never strikes the same place twice. Until it does. I despise you. And there it was. The next obstacle for him to face. Or rather, the next person he genuinely intended to befriend. Naruto endured Narberal's vitriol as he did all things these days, with a smile. Indeed, he beamed merrily as he kicked aside a pebble down the road, eyes fixed firmly on the horizon. The day was young, the sun shining, not a cloud in the sky, which made his smile all the sunnier. Heard you the first time, Nabe? Evidently not. The surly Pleiades scowled sullenly into the dirt as she stomped beside him, else you would have stopped trying to speak with me long ago. But aren't we friends? No. Comrades, then? Nay. Acquaintances? Not in a million years. Here at last the dam broke, and he could contain his mirth no longer. Even in the face of her smoldering fury, he threw his head back and laughed. Such a harsh mistress you are. Narberal absolutely hissed and jabbed an elbow into his ribs, for what little good it did her. High-tier physical nullification endured, she couldn't harm him with such a measly blow. Maybe if she were to break out her magic, but even then the damage would be minimal at best, not just due to his equipment, but his level. Now, he patted her head, idly ruffling her hair. No need to be dishonest with yourself. Tell me how you really feel. These are my true feelings. She thumped him over the head with her sheathed sword. Die in a hole. Naruto laughed harder. Behind them, Luckrut Valve heaved a sigh, slim shoulders slumping in defeat. Some guys have all the luck. What luck? Nabe rounded on the raucous ranger and promptly shot a weak bolt of lighting his way, forcing his fellow blonde to dodge aside, flinging himself to the grass with a yelp. The blast arced harmlessly overhead and struck a distant dead tree, immolating it on the spot. It smoldered sullenly as they looked on, burning down to ashes. Yikes. Peter tooted. You brought that upon yourself, pal. Ninya huffed indignantly. You should know better than to insult a lady. Dine patted his shoulder. Rest assured, we would have healed you afterward. What insult? It was just an offhand comment. I mean, they're clearly together. Killing intense spite. Naruto choked on his own spit. Narberal snarled, fingers sparking. You filthy insect! Only an idiot would ever wish to be with this blonde bastard. Achoo! Evileye sneezed mightily into her mask. Who was talking about her? Now, Naruto deftly plucked the surly spellcaster up by the scruff of her neck as one might a naughty kitten before she could think to sling another spell. Don't attack our friends. That's awfully rude, wouldn't you agree, Mammon? Indeed. Ainz turned his helmeted head from where was having an animated debate with Archie. Nabe, behave yourself. The disguised maid slumped with a sigh, reluctantly conceding defeat at last. As you command. Naruto let her drop, chortling softly to himself as the journey continued in stoic silence. Honestly, he could probably solo the entire Pleiades himself. Lucky for her, he felt no desire to do so. They were just too fun to mess with, and unlike Shalltear, they couldn't harm him. Nor was he trying to bully Narberal, for that matter. Honest. It was just refreshing talking to someone who didn't worship him. He wanted to figure out what made her tick, and this was a rare chance to chat with a Nazarick NPC that wouldn't attack him on sight. He'd be a fool to pass up this opportunity, you know? Behind them, Nfaria's wagon trundled along, blissfully unaware of the impending doom ahead. Berar seems like a good kid, really, but that talent of his concerns me. If he's really able to use any magic item without restriction yet, no. That's seriously scary. Better not let him get a hold of any world items. He might be able to use multiple ones at once. Not having that. Come to think of it, he probably ought to mention that to Ainz. He was a smart guy, the Overlord probably already realized those things existed here, but better safe than sorry. Nazarick had their own world items just as the Great Forest did, kept under lock and key and guarded by his most trusted allies. But allies had a worrying tendency to become enemies where shinobi were concerned, and old habits were hard to shake. Aren't Ainz and I the strongest in this world? Kinda feels like it. Should I keep this to myself? He pondered the matter a moment more as they continued their winding journey to Karn village. It would be good to see how those folks were doing. He and Ainz, and to a lesser extent his death and Obito, had done some good work there. Come to think of it, didn't I resurrect a few people there? Meh, I'm sure it's fine. It's not like they'll worship me or anything. Exist? A sullen mutter drew him from his thoughts. Naruto glanced down, bemused. Pardon? Narberal glared up at him. Why do you exist? Everything was better before you came along. It wasn't as though he was unused to that sentiment. Well, that's a long story. It all started when I was a boy with a dream. She slashed a hand through the air. I do not wish to hear of your past. Answer my question. All right, maybe he was teasing her a little bit. Old habits died hard, didn't they? Now, Nabe, he deliberately used her false name, forcing a flinch from her. That's no way to treat a friend. She grit her teeth. We are not friends. I despise you. Please remove yourself from existence. Well, that was a roundabout way of her telling him to unalive himself, wasn't it? Might I ask why? She puffed out her cheeks, pouting for a moment before rallying. You are a danger. A threat to Nazarick. Lord Ainz should not trust you. Aha! Now they finally came to the meat of the matter. Trust. That was the crux here. Are you afraid I'll take him away? He meant it as a joke, a harmless jape, but immediately realized his mistake when her entire body tensed. I'll kill you 1,000 times, bring you back to life, and kill you 1,000 times more. I don't think that's how it works, you know. Laughing a little, he scratched the back of his head and fell back into a more formal tone of speaking. Allow me to offer a heartfelt apology. What I said was in poor taste. I'm not going to take him away. Please forgive me. But she wasn't relaxed, not at all. There was a murder in her gaze. It looked like she might attack him, orders be damned. Forgive you? He heard something creak in her jaw as she forced the words out. How could I possibly forgive you when you failed to comprehend even the most basic of reasoning? Our Lord was the only one who remained with us until the end. Out of all 41 founders of Nazarick, only he did not abandon us. To suggest otherwise, even as a jest, is a crime punishable by death. Right, he definitely stepped in it. Still, this was a learning experience. Now he knew what not to say. Tapping his staff against the ground, he sighed. I really am sorry, you know. Go talk with your woman if you're that keen on conversation. Arch squeaked behind them, face red. Excuse me? Now, Naruto temporized with the wave of a hand. She's not my woman. If anything, she's my precious assistant. Powerful, too. The latter made Narberal's right ear twitch in quiet curiosity. Archie could probably fight you to a standstill now. You dare? Narberal bristled, but as Nabe she couldn't hit him. Ainz had been very clear on that order. They had to maintain their cover for now. As entertaining as it might be to fight and crush her, he knew Ainz would be livid if he did. Just as he viewed those of the Great Forest as the recreations of his long-lost comrades, and other allies. Besides, so too did Ions consider the NPCs of Nazarick, with the exception of Obito, his very own children. All that remained of his precious comrades will come before. The Overlord wouldn't oblige a rampage on his part. But Archie and Narberal fighting? Those were two very different matters. He almost wanted to see them do it, if only to see who would win. In terms of levels, he was certain Archie had gone from a measly 30 to 73, more than double her original strength. Even then, she was on the verge of what humanity could accomplish, further enhanced by her equipment and spellcasting repertoire. Narberal was hovering at level 63. His keen sight allowed him to see such. A 10-level gap didn't seem like much. Archie was strong, but those maids had some seriously bullshit cheats. Still, he remained confident of her chances. Try telling that to the woman before him. She looked fit to spit. Wait a sec, Ninya hastily tried to interject with a raised hand. We're all friends here, aren't we? Narberal bristled and batted her arm down. Return to your comrades. This matter doesn't concern you. Naruto flicked her a sympathetic smile with a shrug. Besides, sorry, this is a personal matter. We'll talk later, alright? As you wish. Narberal watched the disguised girl retreat with a dark glower. The moment Ninya was out of earshot, she rounded on him. I am a proud maid of the Pleiades. An insect like her couldn't possibly best me. No? He wagged a blonde brow at her, and looked ahead to where Archie was gesturing wildly at Ions. You might be surprised. I spent an entire year training her. What of it? 100 times nothing is still nothing. How many times had he heard those words in his last life? More than he cared to count, or remember. For that matter, you should try fighting her. The experience might prove illuminating. Narberal crossed both arms before her bosom. She's only human. She can't possibly access the higher magics. A year ago, I would have agreed with you. But now? He laughed and made a little pinching motion with his fingers. She's on the verge of casting her humanity away. She clicked her tongue. A race change, then? Do you intend to make her an undead? Tempting, but no. Naruto shook his head and reached up to his neck, idly adjusting the pendant there. Nothing so gauche. I have ways to get around those limitations, that and powerful equipment coupled with the best tutelage this side of the Great Forest. I assure you, her skills aren't lacking. And unlike you, she has a reason to improve. Narberal rolled her eyes. You say that as though I've reached the limit of my abilities. Haven't you? She stilled. An NPC like yourself has a specific function and strength. Besides, he gestured to the horizon and the distant mountains beyond. But I doubt you ever bothered to grind levels, did you? And you need to fight powerful opponents besides. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the first time you left Nazarick. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Her silence was the answer. When was the last time you had a proper fight? A challenging fight? Nabe immediately opened her mouth to answer. Outside of Nazarick, he amended. Her jaw clicked shut. Naruto let her stew in that for a moment, walking slightly ahead of her, forcing the smaller girl to walk to keep up. There's nothing wrong with finding a purpose in life. Seabass would be a good example. You do not mock him? Why would I? He tilted his head, briefly nonplussed by the very notion of slandering the noble butler. Seabass has a good moral code, and actually considers people to be people, unlike the lot of you. She turned her nose up at him. Ants are ants. By the very logic, your precious Mamanga and I were also such. Narberal made a strangled sound and nearly tripped over her own 2 feet. Lies. Naruto shrugged. We weren't always strong. In fact, I was almost powerless. But we improved in our lives each in our own way. You people think of us as gods, and perhaps we are, compared to many of you, but we weren't always such. There was a time when both of us were wretchedly weak, but we grew stronger, in spite of it, improve ourselves. Nonsense. Our Lord was always strong. I refuse to believe otherwise, to even imply such as heresy. He tapped her head with his staff, idly preventing its secondary ability from taking effect. That is why you fail. Her face went blank as she processed his words. Let me give you an example, he continued. Did you know that Yggdrasil, players using super-tier magic are always the first to be targeted? Without fail. He tapped his staff against the dirt, recalling the sheer unbridled destruction that was the fallen down spell. That's part of the reason why your overlord and I don't go slinging around spells like that, and also why we've donned these disguises, so as not to attract attention. Gods flaunt their power. We don't. He hummed and looked back to the Nfiria's wagon, dutifully guarded by the swords of darkness. Ninya saw him staring and granted him a tentative smile, one he returned with a jolly wave. Protect that girl. I am a protector, while Ainz is destroyer, he said to Narberal in return. I give life and he deals death. I protect kingdoms, he'd probably crush one if they irked him. It's a fascinating duality, don't you think? A small, sad smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, one he didn't bother to suppress. In the end, we're both left chasing a single, nebulous goal. And what is that? She asked, voice little more than a whisper. Happiness. He looked to his staff and sighed once. A lot of powerful people are probably gonna die by my hand soon, and I feel bad about that, really I do. But I'll still kill them. Not because I want to, but because it needs to be done. He caught her staring and laughed quickly, scratching the back of his head with a free hand. Not that I'm talking about Nazarick, mind you. Your allies. I promised Einzahem Mummin that I wouldn't hurt any of you without good cause. Her brow furrowed, just a little mollified by his remark. Then who do you speak of? In all honesty? I don't know yet. Looking ahead, his keen sight discerned Karn village in the distance. We'll see. Still a ways in the distance, they'd have to make camp soon. He looked back to Archie, she having quite a time with Ainz, pestering him with questions about magic, and all other manner of odds and ends. To the Lich's credit, he was asking just as many questions. And who could blame him? There were so many things he wanted to look into himself. Talents. Martial arts skills. How quickly people grew in this world and the limits of humanity. Archie had been calling her a successful experiment felt wrong somehow, but she was. She had a long way from that exhausted worker and become a true mage in her own right. Flutter Paradine himself would be no match for her. Amazing what a little bit of hope and inspiration could do for someone. Well, that and a good mentor. Shaking his head, he focused back on the task at hand. Listen, Narberal. It's the duty of the strong to protect the weak. To raise them up and make them better. Not to trample them underfoot and leave them to die. You'd do well to remember that. She tossed her head, flicking a stray strand of dark hair behind her left ear. That may be your prerogative, but I'm certain Lord Ainz doesn't share such a useless outlook on life. Oh? He granted her a bemused look. You might be surprised. I doubt that. She huffed and stormed ahead of him. For once, Naruto didn't give chase. Well, that could have gone better. Nazarick, with few exceptions, disdained humans as a whole, seeing them as lesser. It made him angry. But he couldn't fault their settings. This is how they have been made, by their own creators, no less. Even some of his own allies took a dim view toward the weak. As an elf himself, he'd be the first to admit he'd lost some of his humanity. But he'd been human once, and even his current form wasn't enough to make him forget that. That was fine, it was his duty to teach. You'll learn someday, Narberal Gamma. He muttered under his breath, though you might wish you hadn't. Maybe it was time to ask for advice. Plucking a scroll from his belt pouch, he tossed it into the air and let it burn away into blue flames, and touched 2 fingers to his right ear. Message. Albedo? Do you have a moment? Ordinarily, this wouldn't have been possible, but Ainz had reluctantly allowed him to communicate with a select few floor guardians in a limited fashion. He'd gotten on quite well with Cocytus, for one. He approved himself an audible warrior in their chats. Demiurge and Shalltear somewhat less so, but one couldn't get along with everyone. Naturally, he had extended the same messaging courtesy to Ainz as well. Communication was a two-way street, and while he very much doubted they were going to betray another any time soon, if at all, it never hurt to be safe. He caught sight of the armored lich casually burning a scroll of his own only, to wince as a faint chime heralded the connection. My, a familiar voice hummed, serenely pleased. If isn't the sage? What can I do for you? Nothing much, I just had a few questions. Any luck on getting up the spout? He could hear her preen. I believe I may be with child already. It took all he had not to smile. Good for you. In a twist of bittersweet irony, she was the one soul in Nazarick that looked upon him with minimal suspicion, thanks in no small parts to what he had done for her sake. No complex feelings, no bickering, no growling, no concern that he might be trying to take over. Insofar as she was concerned, he was not a threat. He'd helped her get with Ainz after all. Love was a lovely thing, a hurricane, some might say. That might help keep his friend more human. Rory was asking for you. He smiled at the mention of his daughter, but grimaced at the idea of dealing her mother. Don't want to deal with Shalltear. I would consider it a personal favor if you continued to keep her distracted. That little bitch won't stop complaining lately. Of course she wouldn't. Obito didn't mind making a harem for her beloved Ainz, but her rivalry with Shalltear was legendary. Small wonder she wanted her out the way. Not out of Nazarick, mind you, that was a step too far even for someone like her, but distracted and happily sated? Very much so, apparently. Sorry, he vetoed with crossed arms, but I'm not into runts. Let me know if she finds a way to mature that body of hers, then we'll talk. That would be rather difficult, given she's an undead. Still, I can hardly blame you with that puny body of hers. Was there something you wanted then? He told her of his situation with Nabe and earned a scornful laugh in return. You're interested in that surly girl? Not as such. Frankly, I'd rather pair you with Yuri Alpha. Demiurge is rather curious to see what manner of offspring a Dullahan and a dark elf would produce. I wouldn't be opposed to having more little ones running around myself. After all, my future child will need playmates. He squawked. Albedo. She laughed. My apologies. It's simply refreshing to vent like this without restraint. You won't tell Lord Ainz of this, I trust? Cross my heart. And I promise to help you with that other project of yours, remember? Splendid. She giggled darkly, wicked woman, before launching into an explanation of her own. Simply put, you are a supreme being, yet aren't one of our supreme beings, not the 41 who first established Ainzulgaon. While my beloved Mamanga may have changed his name to do them honor, it doesn't change the fact that they left us. You can never be considered one of them in our eyes. The fact that you aren't truly human is all well and good, she simply fears you will distract our Lord. And you don't? Not at all. He could just imagine her golden eyes narrowing, her mouth twisting in a grotesque grin. You've already gone to such great lengths to assist Nazarick. To turn on us now would be the very height of foolishness. So long as you aid our Lord, I shall treat you as an ally and a valued confidant. However, and here her voice darkened ominously, should you betray us. Like that'll happen. He waved a hand. If there's a disagreement, I'll be sure to let you know ahead of time. Give Rory my love, eh? Tell her I'll stop by for a visit soon. I shall do so. If there's nothing else, I must return to my duties. Nah, that's all. Happy hunting. And to you as well. A low rumbling up ahead drew his attention. Movement from the forest? No, that wasn't quite right. The forest wasn't moving, something else was. As he cancelled the message, he glimpsed great lumbering shapes lurching forward out of the trees, and there below them, a number of smaller, almost child-sized figures racing forward, daggers in hand. Luckrut whistled sharply, twice in quick succession, the sudden warning of which caught his ear. That was the signal they practiced on the road. Ogres and goblins, eh? Narberal growled. At last, something I'm allowed to kill. Naruto sympathized with her wholeheartedly. Finally, some action. Hey, Maman! He laughed at Ainz, brandishing a Rasengan in his right hand. First one to kill the most ogres wins. The dark warrior laughed, brandishing his blades. I'll take you up on that. Some time later, Demiurge unfurled a scroll within his hands. Dutifully, he read the brisk message contained within. Narrow eyes bulged behind his rimmed glasses. A dark, delighted chuckle escaped him. As expected of Lord Ainz. I missed this. Ninya was afraid. She felt no shame in admitting that. Fear was what allowed her to survive this long. Being a coward helped her survive the death of her parents. Her cowardly ways had allowed her to escape when Twere had been taken by that terrible noble. In being a coward, she knew what weakness was, and so resolved to never be weak again. Cowardice had helped her to improve. With her much vaunted talent, she had grown from a helpless waif into a magic caster, an iron-ranked adventurer, made friends and with them, founded swords of darkness. Because she had been afraid, she decided to become strong, so that she might never feel fear again. These days, she liked to think she possessed some meager modicum of strength. Sure, she was nothing like the legendary adamantite-ranked adventures of Blue Roses, but she believed she'd improved. That, with this semblance of small strength and her disguise, she could begin to make her way in the world, forge her own path, finally find and free her big sister, and make her world right again. Yes, there were certainly monsters in the world to be sure, and yes, some of them wore human faces, yet she told herself she no longer feared them because she was stronger now. But right here? Right now? Today? She was reminded of that deep, guttural fear when blood splashed across her face, when the severed halves of an ogre flew past on either side of her, tumbling end over end, spewing dark ichor as they went. Startled by the visceral display, she found herself stumbling back, tripped, and landed hard on her hindquarters. For all the good it did her, the beast was already quite dead. But it wasn't fear of the monster that had her quaking in her boots. That's right, I'd forgotten. There are monsters in the world. Some of them even wore human faces. Stood atop a mound of monster bodies, Naruto Uzumaki tilted his head back and exhaled in a thin plume of scalding steam, staff on his shoulder all but forgotten, hands dripping red with blood. All the while, he smiled, not the smile of a man, but that of a monster wearing human flesh. Too many teeth, eyes too bright, laughter bubbling up in him as he laughed at their demise. When he finally spoke, it wasn't with a shout, or even a snarl, but a sigh. I miss this. As she looked on aghast, the berserk blonde slid down the ramp of corpses, conjured a snarling sapphire sphere to his right hand and smashed it through a goblin's face, rendering it a mass of green paste at his feet. Even as it fell, he reached out with his free hand and conjured another, even larger sphere, bringing it down over his head to flatten another hapless ogre. All around her, the battles of her comrades were completely forgotten, their struggles, their exclamations, all of it. Everyone was holding their own more in some cases, but they were at least using weapons, not spheres spawned from their bare hands. What kind of magic caster was he? She knew she couldn't compete with the likes of Miss Archie and Lady Nabe. They were higher-tiered spellcasters than she, though their skills galled her. She had her pride as a woman, even in disguise. She'd grit her teeth, put on a happy face, and accepted the disparity in their strengths. Likewise, Ninya knew that she couldn't possibly compare with someone like Sir Mammon with his great hulking swords. But to think the gap between her and Sir Naruto was so great. Oh, sorry. Casually dispatching another goblin, The blonde he looked her way, and although his smile softened, she fought down a whimper all the same when he spoke all the same. I'm scaring you, aren't I? Here, I'll tone it down a bit. His right hand rose, fingers splayed, glowing orange. Ninya looked away, fearing the worst. Lion's heart. Just like that, she could found herself able to breathe again. It was like someone had wrapped a warm blanket around her very soul. She inhaled, granting her pained lungs blessed air at last. The fear was still somewhat present, mind you, lurking just under the surface of her thoughts, but tamped down now, allowing her to focus. Naruto loomed over her, no longer quite so horrifying. Better? She hiccuped a little. Better. Good girl. The bemused blonde ruffled her hair with a bloody hand and walked right past her, back into the thick of things. Now stay here and watch. Wait, girl? Had he seen through her disguise? But that meant. Alrighty then, Archie. Clapping his hands, he called out to his assistant. Let's show them what we're made of. His fellow blonde heard her master's shout, and answered him with a happy chirp. Yes, my lord. Pivoting in place, she raised her staff, intoning sharply. Ninya didn't see the point until. Dragon lightning. Oh geez. There went 2 more ogres. And wait, wasn't that magic well above the 3rd tier? Swords of Darkness was a decent party. Good, but not yet great. Ninya could accept that. They were each aware of one another's strengths, and possessed decent teamwork. And yet for all that, their skills felt paltry before this quartet. They should just be mere copper-plated adventurers, ranked well below them. Not one to be outdone, Nabe tooted and indicated an encroaching swarm of goblins with her pointer finger. Maximize magic. Vermilion Nova. Ninya slumped down to her knees with a weak laugh, watching the blaze consume the enemy monsters in its fiery embrace. Diane and Peter trekked over to join her a moment later, wanting no part of the slaughter taking place. Luckrot plunked down beside them with a rueful sigh. They aren't leaving any for us, are they? As though to answer that very question, Sir Mammon swept past them and casually cleaved through 2 ogres in a single sweep. Monsters, the lot of them. They were all way too strong. Not even human. Perhaps most terrifying of all was Naruto. He claimed to be a magic caster, yet there he was ripping and tearing with the best of them, casting his strange spiraling spheres, those whirling techniques, through mobs of enemies with reckless abandon and near manic glee. Mammon! He sang out, laughing exuberantly, that makes 30 for me. How many do you have? A particularly large ogre toppled over, flattening a score of goblins. 35, now. Oh, you big bastard! That still only counts as 1. Minions don't count. Were they treating this as a game? Something particularly large lumbered through the trees ahead of them, larger than the ogres, an ugly thing bearing blue skin, with a large droopy face and a nose whose only a mother could love. It squinted at them with dull beady eyes, scratched at its face, sniffed once and leered their way. Human slots a human seat you all! Ninya scrambled to her feet. Is that a troll? Luckrot went for his daggers as Diane and Peter bridles. Oi now! What's one of those doing here? Mammon and Naruto exchanged a long, lingering look between one another. At length, the latter grinned. You thinkin' what I'm thinking? Mammon's gaze gleamed red within his helm. Indeed. Naruto's eyes blazed blue. Double points? I was thinking triple, actually. The duo rounded on the troll, laughing menacingly, and as they did, a shiver shot down Ninya's spine, like fingers of ice trailing down her back. She wasn't the recipient of their wicked gaze, nor their maniacal cackling, but somehow she found herself pitying the poor troll all the same. Like a lamb led to the slaughter. Had the creature possessed proper sentience, it would have fled on the spot. Instead it buelled forward, grasping for them with pudgy fingers. Food! Naruto stowed his staff and began cracking his knuckles. Archie, stay out of this one, alright? Maman echoed the sentiment. Nabe, this one belongs to us. Do not interfere. He was much closer to the creature given his profession, and thus reached it first. With a single swing of his colossal swords he cleaved through the troll's leg well above the knee. The roll toppled backward with a yelp, caught itself on the remaining limb and pivoted with frightful speed to smack him away. Rather, it tried. The jet-black warrior ducked low and lopped off its hand at the wrist, eliciting a squeal of pain from the crude creature. Naruto arrived a moment later, leaped up and smashed a Rasengan into its chest. Human go up. Troll go down. The outcome was never in question. Alighting neatly beside it, he pivoted and raised an open palm hand toward Maman. Nice one! Up high! After only a moment's hesitation, the dark raven warrior smacked it. Down low! When Naruto made to smack his palm again, the warrior yanked it away. Too slow. No using your passives. Forgive me, old habits die hard. A bead of sweat ran down Ninya's brow. What are those two doing? Behind them, the troll stirred. Peter hollered a warning. It's still alive! Naruto rounded on the beast and lazily caught he clumsy punch it through in his free hand with a disparaging laugh. The troll made a confused noise, unable to comprehend its failure. Even as its wounds healed it struggled against him, to no avail. It may as well have been trying to move the city of Irantal itself for all the good it did. And then... Up you go! Whirling, he spun and tossed the troll at Maman. Full credit where it was due, the warrior reacted accordingly and dealt the creature a devastating cut across the chest, sending it tumbling into the field in a bloody heap. Alas, even that wasn't enough to kill the troll. The lumbering beast righted itself, tore a tree free by the stump and lumbered forward, impromptu club in hand, shouting imprecations at them. Kill you! Maman flicked blood off his blade. Ho! This one can talk a little. Naruto snatched up his staff. Think it's a rare one, then? Only one way to find out. A devastating cut from the towering warrior nearly split the troll clear in half, but even then its blue flesh began to bubble and mend, albeit much slower than before. So they really can regenerate anything short of a lethal blow. Maman mumbled to himself. It really is just like Yggdrasil. Ninya blinked, baffled. What did he just say? They really were treating this like a game. That was the only way she could think to describe the horror unfolding before her. Their casual strength, their easy arrogance, like two lions batting a mouse between them, tormenting the poor creature before its untimely demise. She wanted that. No, she needed that. That kind of stellar strength. With a power like that, she would surely find Tware and take revenge on those who seized her sister. In her brief moment of inattention, the troll was put down. Maximize magic. Raise shuriken. Naruto's attack flashed by, almost too fast for her to see. The troll certainly felt it. Poor bastard lost an arm and most of its shoulder besides. The poor creature hesitated, all of an instant, then started screaming, trying to clutch at its injury and attack at the same time, for all the good it did. Maman moved in on it, brandishing his blades like a butcher preparing to carve up so much meat. Such a noisy worm. Naruto lazily alighted on the troll's head. Death by blades or death by burning? Which would you prefer? From there, the outcome was decided. The troll did not die well. Sometime later, after the battle was done, Ninya knelt and struggled to cut the ears off a downed ogre. Her hands were trembling again, but not from fear, not this time. She was excited. Maybe it was still the lingering effects of the lion's heart spell, but she couldn't quite quell the rapid beating of her heart. Yes, she had been afraid before, but the casual brutality of Mamen and Naruto, their almost jovial camaraderie throughout, had begun to inure her to all the violence she'd seen. Diane was tending to Luckrut and Peter in the background with some brisk light healing. Her teammates were still somewhat rattled by what they'd seen. Miss Archie and Lady Nabe were watching over them while bitterly bickering with one another over some slight or another. Naruto had taken to tearing the troll's body apart, convinced it contained some valuables within. With his bare hands. That was a crazy level of strength. Copperplate adventurers shouldn't be able to pull a feat like that. Heat rose in her cheeks. This is bad. I might be addicted. I wonder if he's looking for another apprentice? A shadow fell over her. Startled, she looked up to find Mamen standing nearby, staring at her inscrutably within his helm. What are you up to? Oh, this? She fumbled for a moment before showing him her dagger and explaining herself. If you submit parts of the monsters you defeat like this, the guild will reward you for them. The dark warrior tilted his head. So you're saying items like crystals don't just drop from them? She laughed nervously, confused. I've never heard of ogres carrying any crystals. Naruto cackled in the background. The troll ate a diamond ring. Lucky. Mamen made an annoyed noise. TCH. They really will eat anything or anyone. Ninya saw her chance and pounced. But you four were amazing. Much more skilled than we expected. Mamen coughed into a fist. I wouldn't go that far. I disagree. Diane chimed from the sidelines. I feel you may be even strong as the royal head warrior. Nabe looked away from Archie, preening. Of course. Archie huffed. Lord Naruto is even stronger. The dark beauty rounded on the shorter girl, butting heads with her. Say that again, bitch. Sparks flew between their eyes. My, are you deaf? Peter and Luckrut chuckled awkwardly as their disagreement continued, the former rubbing a sore bicep where he'd taken a grazing wound. It truly makes me realize there's always someone stronger. No, Mamen tooted, your team will be able to defeat such creatures easily in time. Would they? Not anytime soon. Ninya doubted it. Power. Such power. She needed power. How did they acquire their strength? She must learn their secret. Night came, and with it a hearty stew and loaves of bread besides around the fire. Mamen and Nabe abstained, claiming religious teaching or some such. Naruto and Archie had no such hesitation. They dove into their meal with gusto and were asking for seconds soon enough. They weren't just hungry, they were starving, almost insatiably so. Had they used that much mana? By the way, Mamen asked apropos of nothing, distracting her. Why do you lot call yourselves Swords of Darkness? Luckrut chucked ruefully and scratched the back of his head. Oh, that? Well, Ninya. Shame burned in her. Don't remind me. It was a mistake of my youth. Diane chortled. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Please stop. Peter chuckled ruefully. Basically, the name Swords of Darkness comes from the swords of one of the 13 heroes. Naruto perked up in the background, but someone else beat him to the punch. And they are? Oh ho, so you don't know, Nabe? Luckrut laughed. Ninya saw her chance for redemption and seized it with both hands. Among the 13 heroes, the Swords of Darkness are the 4 swords that the one called Black Knight owned. Our ultimate goal is to find those swords. Until we get our hands on them, this is our symbol. Peter drew forth a jet black dagger, as did the others. They may be small, but we're proud of them. Real or fake has nothing to do with it, Luckrut said in a rare moment of seriousness. These represent the creation of our team, either way. Diane guffawed openly. Well, Luckrut said something surprisingly good. Hey! Isn't that pretty mean? Peter joined in on the good-natured ribbing. We have to praise him every once in a while. You guys treat me way too badly. For a moment their world dissolved into laughter and good-natured ribbing. Nfiria leaned into the warmth of the fire and spoke up, interest piqued at last. Do all adventurers get along well with their team like this? Yup. We trust our lives to one another. Peter thumped his chest. And our team is full of boys, Luckrut chimed in. I've heard that girls in a team can cause serious problems. Ninya shrank in on herself a little from quiet shame and coughed into a fist. And our team has a goal, too. So we're pretty solidified. Maman rumbled a laugh behind his helm. Indeed, things are completely different when everyone shares a common goal. Chance? Were you on a team yourself, Sir Maman? Naruto exhaled heavily for reasons she didn't understand, but didn't interrupt. No need for the sir. Maman chastised her gently. It wasn't as adventurers like yourselves, but yes. Once, when I was weak and alone. Nabe gagged abruptly, choking on her food. A white holy knight saved me, her mentor continued on, undaunted. He led me to people I could call comrades for the first time. They were wonderful allies. A hint of nostalgia colored his deep voice, only somewhat muffled behind his helm. We were the best of friends. I will never forget the days I spent with them. They were my everything. Ninya's heart lurched in her chest. He spoke of them as though they were long gone, or very far away. I'm sure you'll find allies like them again, someday. His head whipped in her direction with an audible creak. That day will never come. Ninya flinched. Maman took the chance and stood with a grunt, departing the fire. Excuse me? Nabe, I'll eat over there. Without missing a beat, she rose to follow him. Then I shall join you. Ninya watched them go and shrank in on herself. I said something I shouldn't have, didn't I? Peter grimaced, his own bowl of stew forgotten. Something must have happened. It did. All eyes turned to Naruto. Oh, don't go looking at me like that. Polishing off the last of his stew, the magic caster set his bowl aside and slung an arm around Archie's. She led him, surprisingly, and leaned into him as he continued speaking. It's really not my place to say, he drawled, but ahem, Maman had many comrades once. More than you could count on your fingers and toes. I didn't know many of them all that well, but I guess you could say I knew of them, if you know what I mean. Were you enemies? Nah, he waved a hand, dismissing the very notion. We just moved in different circles for a while. Our alliance is something of a recent one. Idly, the blonde glanced back to where Nabe and Maman had retreated, the latter staring up listlessly at the moon. When welcome to this land, it was just the two of us. Don't press him on it, it's something of an old wound. Luckrut nodded, misunderstanding. They're probably all gone. People who've lost all their comrades in battle give off that aura. Naruto didn't elaborate further, and helped himself to a third helping of stew instead. Ninya gulped. Sir Naruto, if I may ask, were you? Who, me? Naruto laughed. As for me, I was a bit of a loner. I had people who worked with me, but if you're asking about friends, no, I didn't have many. He looked away, scratching his chin. Although I understand the pain Maman's dealing with. Did he know something? Peter sympathized with a nod of his own. That's a rough thing to deal with. Dine clapped her on the back. The words you have said cannot be taken back, Ninya. So you must take action to paint over what you've already said? Trust a druid to be understanding. She bowed her head. I'll do so. After all, she knew the pain of losing loved ones. How could she have been so thoughtless? Tware's face flashed before her mind. Big sis. Still, Nfiria chimed in, desperate to recover from his previous blunder. Sir Maman's strength today was amazing to see. Peter thumped a fist into his palm. Yeah. I never thought he would be that strong. How skillful must one be to take down orcs in a fell swoop? Dine shook his head, more than a little reserved. To be honest, I still believe he's royal head warrior level. Eh? That would mean adamantite class. Naruto and Archie continued with their meal, content to be forgotten. Ninya wouldn't have it, not after everything she'd seen. Sir Naruto was plenty strong as well. The blonde choked on his meal. Archie hummed her agreement. He's spectacular, isn't he? Naruto began thumping his chest. Indeed. Dine grunted. For a magic caster, you are surprisingly physical in combat. A chorus of agreements echoed around the fire. I am? Naruto swallowed his meal, glared at Archie and scratched a whiskered cheek. He had bad habits, I guess? Well. Downing the rest of his meal, he stood hurriedly, causing a flustered Archie to mirror him. Guess we'll turn in for the night. You guys can have the first watch. Ah. Wait a moment. Ninya tried to snag his sleeve, to no avail. Her fellow magic caster slipped out her grasp, fled to the other side of the encampment, and all but dove inside his tent. Silence reigned supreme in his absence, save for the crackling of the fire. Peter swooped in to save the conversation. You know, when I first saw Mammon, I was jealous of his full-plated armor. And he had a beauty like Nabe by his side. Lukrut chimed in less than helpfully. Ninya elbowed him ruthlessly. But I can't help acknowledging him after seeing their skill. Their leader finished. He's the real deal, isn't he? Dine nodded. Indeed, he must have trained long and hard. And when we saw his face. Firia perked up. You saw under his helm? Quite so, he is not from around here. What did he look like? The pharmacist panicked. Nad started flailing his arms. What country did he say he was from? Peter blanched. We didn't get that specific. Lukrut tilted his head. He's the same race as Nabe, but I can't honestly say he was handsome. Naruto definitely is, though. Peter disagreed. I doubt that his looks are an issue. Besides, with skills like that, I'm pretty sure those two don't have trouble getting with women of any race. Dine nodded. Indeed. Women instinctively flock to men with strength no matter looks. It's a fact of life, my friend. Firia blanched for reasons Ninya didn't understand. I see. Are they really that popular with women? Putting aside Mammon's physical looks and Sir Naruto's brutality, their strength is the real deal. But Naruto's always fighting with Nabe. Lukrut cackled. Firia, boy. Have you ever heard the saying? Opposites attract. They may fight in public, but I bet they're going at it like rabbits. Ninya winged an empty wooden bowl at the ranger's head, knocking him over. He toppled with a yelp. Not the face. And so their watch began. It ended just as quickly. Ninya didn't even realize her watch had concluded until she felt a hand on her shoulder. Blearily, she looked up to find Naruto looming over her with an easy smile. Is it that time already? He nodded once, but didn't release her. If anything, his grip on her collarbone redoubled, effectively pinning her in place as he plunked down on the log beside her. She risked a fretful glance his way, only to relax when he finally let her go. Even so, she couldn't bring herself to stand. His words, when they came, rooted her like a tree. Is there a particular reason why you're disguising yourself as a boy? She froze. How did you? Naruto tapped his nose. Can't fool this. His nose? Panic bloomed within her. Please don't tell the others. Wasn't planning to. He leaned back on the log. We all have our own secrets. Ninya looked up as the baffling blonde, still chagrined by her blunder. I'm sorry if I offended you earlier? A big blue book thumped down in her lap, cutting her short. She caught it, jolted when she realized just how heavy the thick tome was, and instinctively clutched it to her chest. What's this? Your first magic lesson from yours truly, Naruto informed her primly. Start reading. Her eyes lit up. You're going to teach me? No, I just like throwing books at people. He chuckled. Of course I'm gonna teach you. She was silent for a long moment, considering the weathered book in her lap. It looked old. Ancient even. Who knew what manner of spells might be contained within? You know, I heard there was an incredible magic caster in Karn Village. Someone who could even bring the dead back to life. I wonder if any spells for resurrection are in here. Naruto fell silent. He was silent for a long while. Ninya squirmed under his stern gaze. And then, quite suddenly, he spoke. You were honest with me, so I'll be honest with you. Watch closely now and don't tell anyone about this. Before her very eyes, he did something with his hands, a gesture she couldn't comprehend. As she looked on, his form shimmered and shifted. It wasn't much of a change. His pale face simply gained the tan, and his ears sharpened to tapered points, while he seemed to grow several inches, his face more lean as a result. Oh, and there were those strange whiskered marks on his cheeks, as well. They seemed deeper somehow, darker. All in all, he towered over her, even more so than ever before. As if she didn't feel short enough. No, never mind that. Her eyes widened. A dark elf? His mismatched gaze gleamed. You're surprisingly astute. I'll ask you not to reveal my true identity to your friends. Why show me at all, then? Naruto beamed. Because I feel a certain kinship with you, and I sense that you're trustworthy. She bridled. Are you saying Peter and the others aren't? No, I simply don't know them well enough. And you believe you know me? His head bobbed once. I wouldn't call myself a collector, more of a teacher. Call it a habit of mine. Just how quickly does that talent of yours allow you to learn spells? Truly? No lies, now. She squirmed a little, unable to help herself. You found me out, huh? Another nod, far shorter than the last. I have. Ninya told him the truth, and his grin grew. All right, my student. Let's get started. With that, her first lesson began. Well, seems I really did it. Not even I saw this coming. Ainz observed Naruto from afar. Well, not from afar per se, given they were traveling together, but still. Just what was the opposite of afar, unway? Nearby? Didn't sound quite right. Semantics. In any case, he observed his fellow player closely as the night wove on, carefully noting his every action, his every word, every movement, and filing it away for later, just as he had during the day. His interactions with Narberal and Ninya most of all. The former had complained loudly and bitterly about the disguised dark elf, but now, as he watched Naruto work with Ninya over that spellbook, he found himself pondering the blonde's motives as well. He didn't appear to be antagonistic at all, far from it. He was playing the role of a mindful mentor, dutifully explaining spells she would have otherwise had no hope comprehending any time soon, even with her remarkable talent. Kh, he groaned inwardly, trying and failing to make sense of it all. What's he up to with Ninya anyway? Is he trying to recruit her the same way he did Archie? No, he's only shown her his true form and taught her a few spells. What's the point? What does he stand to gain from this? More useful followers sounded like the obvious conclusion, but he already had his own, not to mention Archie, in whom he had invested quite a bit of time. Why bother with another then? Is he really that interested in her talent? Or was it something else? Naruto hadn't shown a speck of interest in the rest of them, not a bit. Insofar as he was concerned, the remaining members of Swords of Darkness may as well be gum under his boots, something to be trod underfoot, grimaced at, tossed aside and summarily forgotten like the ants they were. Whoops, he chided himself, gotta watch that. As an elder lich, nay, an overlord, it was all too easy to simply not care about humanity, or even view them in a poor light, despite having been one himself all too recently. In many ways, his fellow player had an advantage over him. Disguise or no, Naruto's given race allowed him to associate with others' adventurers with impunity. As an undead, Momonga didn't have the luxury. He was limited to what means he had as Mammon for now. It wasn't fair. Ainz tilted his head, red eyes scrutinizing his fellow player further through the visor slit of his helm. He wanted to be over there, talking with them, conversing with them, arguing with them. Sensing the weight of his gaze, or perhaps merely his intent, Naruto craned his neck back to regard him and… Why is he giving me a thumbs up? Is he up to something? I'm not cut out for these mind games. Ainz narrowly resisted the urge to remove his helm and gnaw on a skeletal finger from the sheer stress of it all. And yet, it almost made him nostalgic. Naruto was no touch-me to be sure, but he rather reminded him of his proud paladin friend all the same. A bit more stubborn perhaps, something of a collector, and far more willing to kill those who crossed him or otherwise threatened his comrades, yet the spirit was there all the same. And helping others? That was him to a T. If the road is harsh, it is only natural to take up your sword and help. Such should be the way of the world. Touch Me had been a police officer back in their world, yet all but powerless despite it. That's right. Momonga turned his gaze to the starry sky above, idly catching himself reaching for the heavens before he could think to stop. Our old world was awfully messed up, wasn't it? He hadn't thought about home in quite some time. That broken, twisted world had been far from his thoughts for quite some time now. By that account alone, this world was far better than that polluted, corporate-run trash pit he once called home. A world where you had to don goggles and a gas mask just to go outside wasn't a world at all. Better this unknown, healthy realm with its many myriad mysteries, countless secrets, and dauntless dangers than that putrid pit. In a way, just as Naruto was the sole survivor of the Great Forest, so too was he, Momonga, the last of Ainz Gaon. He had to stick it out here, he must, even on the 1 in a million chance that someone like Touch Me, warrior Takamikazuchi, or even the eccentric Bakubuka Chagama made it into this world as well. Any one of them could be here, struggling to find their way in this brave new world without their god-level equipment and items. The idea of forsaking his comrades to suffer in silence was anathema to him. Abandoning their glorious past to pursue his own goals felt wrong. Surely someone must be out there. Surely he wasn't the only one. Surely he wasn't alone. An awful thought occurred to him, suddenly. What if Naruto gave up? What if he went away? What if one day their alliance went sour, and they went from tentative friends to the most bitter of enemies? I'll be alone. After all this time, he'd begun to enjoy having the blonde bastard around. His antics, his banter, his silly schemes, all served a reminder of the life he had once led. Even the way they'd laid into those ogres and that troll together harkened back to happier times when he and his guildmates would compete for points, seeing who could kill the most monsters. In a way, it was like having a small piece of the past of the old days, the glory days, in his skeletal hands. Losing that again terrified him. His fists clenched tight at his sides, metal gauntlets creaking ominously as the high-quality material began to buckle under the strain. The more he dwelt on the possibility, the less he liked it. No, actually, he hated it. Responding to the rising negativity, his natural passive as an undead sought to suppress his emotions, yet that only made him even angrier in return, to which his passive clamped down yet harder, resulting in a surging feedback loop that fed in on itself. His teeth gnashed together, producing an awful grinding noise behind his helm, shoulders trembling from the sheer rage of it all. He was so very tired of being suppressed, be it here and now, or during his time with Obito in the bedroom. His growing struggle to hold on to his humanity both alarmed and caused him to despair in equal measure. How could he not be angry? And yet the longer he resisted, the worse it became, until finally his emotions began to manifest in the physical world. A suffocating aura of true darkness stemmed from his shoulders. Bleeding black wisps of dark light, could light truly be dark, into the air as a low growl perforated what passed for his throat these days. Logically, he knew he really ought to calm down. He'd begun subconsciously manifesting his skill, aura of despair at its maximum, but he couldn't, try as he might, he simply couldn't contain himself. Naruto looked up from his work with Ninja. Narberal tensed beside him, shrinking back in the face of his overwhelming wrath, but he barely noticed her. Exasperated, he flung back his head and howled at the heavens with an exasperated shout. Damn you! Let me be angry! It's not fair! A startled squawk from Archie informed him that he'd inadvertently awoken the others in their tents, and he cursed himself for the slip. In that brief moment of inattention, his passive pounced. A faint green glow within his armor numbed his emotions before they could spiral deeper into a black rage, and with it, his aura of despair reluctantly abated for now. Che, he seethed sullenly. Suppressed again. Off to the side, he saw Naruto cast a gaze back to the tents, heard him tut once, watched him tap his staff down. A faint violet miasma rose from his twisted weapon and settled over the tents, muffling them in a mist even as they sought to rise. In an instant, the shapes within slumped and were fast asleep once more. Ainz looked his way once and nodded once in silent thanks. Narberal Gamma tentatively approached him, wringing her hands, face pale from having suffered under his aura. Lord Ainz, are you all right? He glared at her, still not quite willing to release his anger. I told you to call me Mommin when we're like this. My apologies. She bowed her head. Are you angry at me? Have I done something to displease you? Why would she think it's her fault? No, never mind that, I've gotta fix this. It's fine, Narberal. He raised a hand and considered patting her head, thought better of it, and touched 2 fingers to the side of his head instead. I simply lost a hold of my temper. I'll apologize to the others. A chime in his ear informed him of a message spell before he could. Lord Ainz. Yes. Thank goodness. A useful distraction. Demiurge. All is well, I trust? Not quite, my lord. Obito was asking after you. She was most insistent. He tilted his head, baffled. Was she now? She was indeed. I believe she said you were in great distress. Naturally, I contacted you right away to ascertain the truth of her words. Ain's skeletal jaw clacked open beneath his helm, red eyes momentarily dimming from the sheer disbelief what he'd been told. Ha! Can she sense when I'm upset? Is it one of her abilities? I mean, she's a succubus and we've done that together, but still. My lord? It was a momentary lapse. He responded quickly, embarrassed by the slip. I'm all right now. Gotta watch that. If she can sense when I'm crashing out, she might realize I'm not a capable ruler. Careful, careful. He really wasn't cut out for running Einzelgaun alone, but so long as he could fake it, he'd make it. Right. I shall inform her of such. He could practically hear the archdevil bowing through the mental link. My apologies for wasting your time. Best nip that in the bud. It wasn't wasted, Demiurge. Tell her I'm touched by her concern and I'll visit her shortly. I'll be certain to relay the message. Good. How goes your project? Quite well. The floor guardian practically preened as his inquiry. I already have several subjects lined up. Naturally, a great many were drawn by your offer of ascension as it were, and one has already broken their limits. The results were quite promising. Your brilliance truly knows no bounds. Excellent. I'll leave it in your hands then. As you command, my lord. The message spell faded, leaving him to ponder the words of his subordinate. In the somber silence that followed, Momonga released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Yeesh, talking with Demiurge always exhausts me. He looked back to Naruto and Ninya, considering the duo anew. Ascending humans, huh? The idea of elevating humanity wasn't without merit, he supposed. Archie was an excellent example. She was still human just barely, and yet in the span of a year, she'd already managed to surpass Narberal. It would be interesting to see them fight. Come to think of, Cocytus had been asking for a match with Naruto as well. No. Don't dwell on that right now. Focus on the task hand. What might Ninya and the Swords of Darkness become, given proper time and attention? Could they make adamantite rank? Or perhaps they could reach the heights of... No. I'm getting way ahead of myself, here. He pondered the matter a moment more before dismissing it. Great Forest and the Great Tomb remained allies for now, but that might change. Moreover, Naruto didn't care to conceal his identity as well as he did. He wore his emotions on his sleeve and was all too willing to cover for him. Though he currently lacked a heart, but something thumped in his undead chest all the same. Damn that sage. Still, it helped him feel more human. Surely that was a good thing, right? As such, he used his skill and listened intently to what followed. Can you bring people back to life? This from Ninya. I can, Naruto informed her between turning one page and another. There's a cost. If this sister of yours is already dead. Ninya flung herself forward and slammed her forehead into the ground, all but bowing before him. I'll do it. Whatever you like. I'll even give you my life, if need be. Naruto sputtered and flailed his hands. Stop that, stop it. Raise your head already. I've had enough bawling and groveling for one lifetime. All I ask is that you keep my secret. And my team? I won't reveal myself to them unless I have good reason to. He scratched his chin and looked to the horizon, where the moon was slowly sinking toward the trees. Karn Village is rather fond of me. I hope they didn't do anything silly while I was away. Ninya clasped his hands. I'm sure they hold you in the highest esteem. That's what worries me. Now then, on to your next lesson. These spells won't learn themselves. Yes, sir. Momonga scoffed as the conversation dissolved into meaningless babble and silenced his skill. Hold him in high esteem? That was putting it mildly. After his antics, he wouldn't be surprised if the people started worshipping like some sort of local deity. In hindsight, it hadn't occurred to him to keep Karn Village under surveillance, but in the future he might well do so. Tooting softly, the disguised undead looked away. It was a shame, really. They would never be as good as his old comrades, but in a way they still reminded him of them. Of happier days, simpler times, when his emotions were being suppressed. It was a shame, though. Ninya might have made a half-decent maid. He wasn't so naive as to believe himself invincible, now more than ever, with another player around. But far from make him cautious, it left him feeling bold. Hopeful, even. If someone like Naruto was here, then perhaps some of his guildmates had been brought to this world as well. Maybe Ainzogaon could be reformed. But he digressed. Maybe it was nostalgia for the old days talking, but he'd come to appreciate his company, despite the chaos he'd caused. How long had it been since he'd experienced this feeling? It paled in comparison to the heyday of Ainzogaon, but in a way, it helped keep him connected to the fleeting fragments of his humanity. Where was his heart in all this? He couldn't say. But so long as Uzumaki remained, maybe being a little human wouldn't be so bad. It's only natural to help someone in trouble. His emotions might have dulled since he'd gained this body, but the words of his old comrades still made his soul tremble. He would honor those words and do his best to hold on to his emotions. Maybe a bit of humanity wasn't so bad after all. The dawn came, and with it, forgiveness. Ninya noticed it as they resumed their journey. All the tension from last night's meal was nowhere to be seen. More than that, everyone, even Firia, seemed downright jovial as they set out toward Karn village. If anyone was still nursing awkwardness or grudges of any sort, they hid it well, even Mammon himself. She'd heard the Dark Warrior shouting at the stars last night, howling his rage to the heavens. He must have exhausted all his anger back then, because he seemed downright jovial now, bantering with Naruto about something called skills and ascension and the like. Not that she could make heads or tails of their conversation, mind you. Even if she could, she wasn't in any condition to comment on it. She was still rather woozy herself after all. And why wouldn't she be? She'd stayed up all night studying with Naruto, listening to his lessons, poring over the spellbook he'd given her with single-minded fervor until finally, she began to understand. There was a realm of magic far beyond the one she thought she knew, and in it, she may as be a grain of sand, an ant, scurrying around the feet of giants. Perhaps, in time, she could become one herself. Thoughts for later, she supposed. For now, her body wasn't best pleased with her for staying up so late. She'd pay for that later, but she considered it a trade well spent. She was also reeling from other, far more surprising revelations regarding her new mentor. A dark elf. Who would have thought? And a handsome one at that. No, she mustn't think such things. He already had Miss Archie, and so she assumed Lady Nabe, judging by the way the two of them bickered like an old married couple. Small wonder he had chosen to disguise himself when going out and about. After all, it's important to be on guard, Peter said suddenly, snapping her back to reality. Dine agreed, sending a wry nod her way. So true. The greatest enemy is carelessness. Ninya took the olive branch for what it was, eager to join the conversation, and perhaps tease Luckrut a little, if only so she didn't feel like the odd one out here. Right, she gripped her staff tight in hand, glancing at the sunny skies above. We should keep our wits about us. A dragon could suddenly swoop down from the sky. Seriously? Their resident ranger pulled a face, glancing back at her in faux dismay. Are you trying to jinx us, Ninya? Not really, she favored Luckrut with a laugh. Around the area of Irantal, there are legends of a dragon that could freely control nature. And to the north of the Azurlija Mountains over there, she craned her neck towards the forest to peer at the distant peaks looming on the horizon. I've heard quite a few living frost dragons who have made their lair. Naruto perked up, the barest beginnings of a smile tugging at his disguised visage. Dragons, you say? That might be fun. Nabe snorted. So eager to waltz into your grave? Not at all. His smile had become an outright grin now. Actually, I'd like to recruit. Archie shook her head and yanked on his sleeve before he could finish speaking. Naruto, no. He grinned down at her, eyes sparkling. But dragons? Just think of them. All the glory. All that gold. Naruto, no! Naruto, yes. I'll tell Mrs. Death. He cackled. By all means. She'd probably join in. Who on earth was Mrs. Death? And what was this painful, twisting feeling in her chest? Mammon coughed suddenly, diverting Ninya from her brooding. Would you happen to know the name of the dragon that freely controls nature, perchance? Huh! She blinked, somewhat startled by the sudden inquiry, much less his curiosity. Oh no. Not its name. I'll check when we return to town. The Dark Warrior considered a moment, then nodded once. Could you look into that for me? I'd appreciate it. Relief flooded her as she recognized the proverbial olive branch. He wasn't angry after all. Of course. She glanced at Naruto, who flashed her a thumbs up. All was well. Or not. Because, you see, Karn village had a fence. Said fence hadn't been there the last time Naruto came by. It was well on its way to becoming a proper wooden wall at that. Given a few weeks it might become a thick wooden wall, but for now it sported a sturdy gate and some wicked-looking spikes. He pitied the fool who tried to scale that thing in its current state. There was also the barest beginnings of what looked like a moat, which suggested a great many things, none of them good. Karn had once been quaint and quiet, downright homey really, far quieter and less packed than the fortress city of Irantal. Now, who was turning this pleasant little village into a fortress and why? Naruto wrinkled his nose as they drew near the gate. This scent. It almost smelled like well, that was surprising. Luckrut held out a hand mere moments before he could comment on it. Well, that he did, too, because swarm of squat green figures crowded out of the village entrance, still more burst up from the long grass to surround them. They were, each of them armed to the teeth. One of them, an archer, snapped at them, "Who the hell are you guys?" The swords of darkness and fiery bridled, weapons raised. Momonga made a baffled noise behind him. Ha! Archie elbowed him, not that he could blame her. Narberal wore a look of disgust. Goblins? No, not just any goblins. These were clearly a tier above the savage brutes they'd fought on the road. This lot had armor, unit cohesion, even proper ambush tactics. They held their ground, more than happy to skewer them full of arrows if they didn't like their response. A grin split his face. All this, from one of those little horns? That settled it then. He had more than a few questions for Henry. The archers saw his smile and bristled anew. Oi, Blondie! Put down your staff! His grin grew. Poor choice of words. Wait! A new voice cried out as the leader, a stout goblin wielding a broadsword, warily lowered his weapon, voice rough with command. We really don't want to fight you guys if we don't have to. Especially the blonde and the full-plated guy. He indicated him and Ainz without fail. They give off a real bad vibe. Oh? So they could tell that much? And they have a sense of self-preservation, too? Which means they're capable of reason and higher levels of thought. Gah! I want to collect them. What's the meaning of this? A familiar girl clad in the extravagant flowing robes of a golden priestess pushed her way through the entrance with a shout, nudging aside goblins as she went. Put your weapons down at once. I told you not to attack visitors on sight. You're being rude. Aha, sorry about that, boss. The leader goblin scratched the back of his bald head with a rueful laugh. Can't be too careful these days, especially not after last time. And Firia cried out at the sight of her. Henry? Henry, he'd suspected it was her even with her hair down like that, rounded on him with a delighted cry. Firia? Why are you? She looked past him and her eyes locked onto Naruto, akin to that of a baby bird recognizing its parent. He found himself simultaneously sweating and swearing inwardly at the same time. She was staring at him far too intently for his liking. What are the chances she recognized me? Slim, right? This was a good disguise, Archie even said so. Lord Naruto. Enria rushed him, practically tackling him in her haste to get at him. He caught her without thinking, instinctively gripping her about the hips and spinning her around once to bleed off excess momentum as a bemused older brother might upon encountering his little sister. The second he set her down, she was on him, badgering him with happy noises. Where have you been? We missed you. Nini's been asking for you every day. She tilted her head, and then, with all the innocence of a teenager, said the one thing she shouldn't have. But why are you disguised as a human? You look much better as an elf. Naruto twitched. She can see through this? Ainz coughed into a fist. Archie sighed. All the while, Naruto's mind reeled. While he had disguised himself as a human, he admittedly hadn't put much effort into it. He made himself look a bit shorter, changed the color of his eyes, he hadn't necessarily changed the shape of his face or made any over-alterations. Certainly not his voice either. He simply hadn't felt the need. He could feel Ninya sheepishly scratching the back of her head while the swords of darkness staring at him, to say nothing of Nfiria. Enri realized her mistake a moment later and backed away, flailing her arms in apology. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you were traveling incognito." "Eh?" the head goblin chuckled. "So you're the boss of our boss, huh?" Enri elbowed him with a hiss. "Jugum! Be polite." "Sorry, boss." Naruto dragged a hand down his face and dispelled the disguise with a sigh. Well, the fox was out of that bag. Today was a downward slope of disappointment. "Now then, everyone!" Enri gestured to her goblins. "Just like we practiced." Naruto felt a mounting sense of dread. Practiced? As one, Enri and her troops bent the knee and knelt before him, bowing their heads. "Welcome home, Lord Naruto. Our ruler and savior. Karn village awaits your command." "What the hell?" Mammon coughed into a fist to disguise a snort, armored shoulders silently shaking in mild mirth. Bastard was laughing at him. He just knew he was. Narberal huffed. "Of course these lesser life forms would worship you." "Hey! It's only natural, isn't it?" Archie beamed up at him, as though nothing and no one were better in this world than him. He must have saved them at some point, obviously, just as he saved me. Naruto's right eye, meanwhile, had begun to twitch. Well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions come back to bite me in the butt." A stray bead of sweat ran down his brow as he looked back to the still kneeling Enri and her goblins in quiet disbelief. If they were acting like this, he shuddered to think how the rest of the villagers would react. There could be only one logical conclusion. Did I found a cult? Karn village is worshipping me. As in actual worship. Like a local deity or something. Did I do this? I think I did this. No, I definitely did this when I revived all those dead people. Karn village wasn't quite a cult. Technically speaking. Kinda. He was grasping at straws, wasn't he? Everywhere he looked, and yes, he did mean damn near everywhere, Naruto saw the signs of adoration bordering on outright worship. Men bowed in his presence, women curtsied, children waved like he was a hero straight out of their storybooks. Had that been all, he might have put the discomfort from his mind and moved on. It was their eyes, or rather, the way they gazed upon him, that concerned him so. These people, they didn't look at him like he was a man or even an elf, but rather a god, divinity made flesh. They probably worshipped the very ground he walked on. He knew the look all too well. Thankfully these folks weren't at all like that ghastly Jashin cult Haiden hailed from. He'd take benign worship over praising a mad wounded god any day. Worship aside, like it or not, and he didn't, Karn village had changed, in many ways for the better. In truth, he would hesitate to call it a village at all anymore. Everywhere he looked he glimpsed the building blocks of greatness, the foundation of wonderful things yet to come. Many of those rickety wooden homes he remembered from his last vice had been torn down, and proper stone buildings were being built in their places. Roads had been laid, people were practicing with weapon and bow alike. This place was coming back to life. Made him proud, it did. The worshipping part? Not so much. He couldn't help but notice more than a few of those warriors wearing his favorite colors as well, which only served to unnerve him further. Sure, orange and black were great and all, but there was a limit. Even for him. How the heck did I survive as a ninja wearing those colors anyway? Come to think of it, didn't I wear orange and blue before that? Was I naive or just stupid? The answer was a bit sadder than one might expect. In truth, they were just about the only clothes an orphan could get their hands on, gaudy hand-me-downs that no one wanted. At the time, he thought the colors were cool and that they made him stand out. He'd been right about that much they had, which was the last thing any decent ninja should want. Bright colors coupled with a noisy attitude made you a target in the field. What a target he was! Coupled with his noisy attitude, it was a wonder he'd survived to adulthood, let alone mellowed out. Kurama would have chimed in with a snarky retort right about now. His silence pained him. Archie had once exclaimed she could see him with her talent for lack of a better term. But while that remark had proven somewhat heartening at the time, he still hadn't found a way of waking him up assuming it could even be done. In many ways, he was as alone now as he was back then. Oh, don't think stuff like that, you'll get depressed. Naruto exhaled slowly through his nose, calming himself. Thoughts for later. When they reached the center of the village, he truly found himself blown away. A strangled noise escaped his lips as he balked at the boisterous sight before himself. What in actual hell is this? Behind him, Nephiria and the Swords of Darkness, all four of them, tilted their heads to stare at the grand spectacle before them. Archie offered a low whistle. Narberal made a disgusted noise. As for Ainz, his shoulders shook silently as he coughed into a fist. Coughed. Yup. Definitely didn't laugh. Not that he couldn't blame them, any of them. Why, you ask? Simple. There was a statue of him. In the town square. An honest-to-goodness towering titan of his likeness standing imposingly upon a large plinth. Carved of stern stone rather than gold, thank the sage, it nevertheless held a striking resemblance to him, right down to his staff and other high-tier equipment. Truly, the quality of the craftsmanship easily exceeded anything Karn should have been able to produce. And yet... He caught Henry beaming at him out the corner of his eye and making eyes at him. Do you like it, your godliness? Pornphyria, meanwhile, looked like he was about to collapse in a dead faint. Darn it all! I ain't trying to steal your girl. Honest. Strictly speaking, Naruto didn't consider himself a god. How could he, when he never believed himself to be one? For him, it was a simple fact of life, a belief that had been hammered into him since his earliest days. Him? A god? No way. Not divine, nor a deity, either a demigod, no siree, no indeedy. He was just himself, you know? Technically, one could play devil's advocate and argue that he'd become something of a god given his ancient ancestry. After all, he was the final incarnation of Ashura, son of Hagoromo, who himself was the child of Kaguya, a literal living goddess in her own right before she'd been separated and sealed. So, yes, godhood, related to divinity and all that awkwardness. Yet for all that he knew it was the truth, he still didn't accept it as fact. Maman stepped up beside him, idly gazing at the towering statue. A most impressive display. Henry clasped her hands together and chirruped happily. I'm so glad you think so. We all worked hard on it. Naruto's right eye twitched as furiously sent his counterpart a telepathic message spell. They're treating us like gods. We ain't. Us? To his credit, the armored lich never once looked away from the statue, either breaking character, not drawing undue attention to himself for a moment. They don't seem to care about me at all. Oh, you helped out too. The perfect warrior's right shoulder shifted ever so slightly as he offered the mental equivalent of a shrug. Yet I wasn't the one who raised the dead. It took everything Naruto had not to fling up his arms with an aggravated shout. Because it was the right thing to do. His fellow player sighed softly. That may well be, but actions have consequences. I did warn you. TCH. Naruto clicked his tongue. Realization broke like the dawn, leaving a sour taste in his mouth. Wait a minute, did you know this would? Before he could hope to finish, a delightful gasp filled the air. He'd only just begun turning towards the source when he spied a flicker of color. A tiny blur in a blue dress detached itself from the back of the statue and flung itself at him with an exuberant cry. Naruto! Instinct took over and he moved without thinking. He flung out an arm horizontally to intercept the attacker. Sure enough, his would-be assailant collided with his outstretched limb and latched on like a limpet, which in turn let him lift it and her, with lazy grace, leaving her little legs dangling beneath her his elbow. Bright brown eyes beamed back at him from a childish face framed by auburn hair woven in a pair of messy pigtails. Her smile could have outshone the sun, could have given Yui a run for her money, really. Hi! Nimumat, Enri's little sister, beamed back at him like he was her favorite person in the whole wide world. Did you miss me? He laughed aloud, and ruffled her hair affectionately. Nope. She pouted, then saw his smile. You definitely did. Just like Yui. ACH, it was like having another daughter. He missed his baby girl. Muffling the brief flicker of nostalgia, Naruto forced his grin to redouble. Maybe a little. On a whim, he gave his arm a shake, and when he utterly failed to dislodge the clingy girl, feigned a glower. You're not gonna let go of me, are ya? The younger Imat stubbornly clung on tight, still dangling from his arm for dear life. Nope. Narberal made an annoyed noise and wrinkled her nose. Yet another ant? Archie and Ninya shared a commiserating look. Nimue! Enri sighed fondly, distracting him before he could comment on that remark. I'm so sorry, she's been like this ever since you left without warning. Mother and father wanted to meet you too, given you didn't stick around all that long. In the background, Nfiria foamed at the mouth and all but slumped to the floor with a despairing sound. Naruto winced inwardly. That settles it. Note to self, shove the girls at him first chance I get. Poor boy deserves some love. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate the attention, really, he did. Nimue and Enri were simply much too young, and the former had Nfiria's eyes. Yui might be glad of some playmates, though. Honestly, it was like having a pair of new little sisters and he didn't know what to do with them. He dreaded the idea of Rory meeting them, though. She'd go nuts. What's all this commotion now? Enri and Nimue perked up as two strangers approached, but judging by their reactions, they weren't strangers at all. In short order, he found himself face to face with a homely blonde woman who bore a passing resemblance to Enri, clutching an odd bundle to her bosom. Behind her stood a lively-looking man with dark red hair who could only be Enri and Nimue's father. They were, the both of them, wearing robes of orange and black, much to his eternal chagrin. Surprisingly, it was the latter who sketched an awkward curtsy to him with one "Ha-dee, welcome back, my lord." Right, nope, not having that. Expertly diverting their attention, he pivoted, plucked Nimue from his arm and thrust Nimue at her father with a pleading look. Thankfully, the man accepted her all too readily, suggesting he had experience in dealing with clingy children. For her part, his wife tooted in quiet amusement. Nimue, dear, don't go crowding Lord Naruto. He's a very busy man. She gave her mother a fearsome pout. But I wanted to see him. And now you have. Her father chided gently. Be a good girl or no dessert tonight. Nimue clammed up with such speed that even Naruto couldn't help but chuckle despite himself. Good to see some things never change, no matter the world. Kids were easy to bribe when it came to sweets. Unfortunately, his laughter inadvertently drew Enri's attention. She took a hold of his arm and steered him toward her family. If I might introduce my parents? Nfiria twitched once on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Poor guy. Naruto winced in silent sympathy as the swords of darkness helped the poor pharmacist over to a nearby bench and promised to make it up to him. Enri tugged on his arm, drawing him close to his doom. He turned a pleading look on his companions. A little help? Narberal scoffed, and turned up her nose at him, the bitch. Archie smiled indulgently as though such a thing were expected of him as her savior. Mamanga, still mentally connected to him by way of the message spell, shrugged helplessly and severed said spell with a parting comment. You've made your bed, I'm afraid. My lord? Enri looked to him, blinking innocently, blind to the byplay. Is something the matter? It's nothing. Naruto fought down a twitch of his own, struggling to keep the smile plastered on his face as he stared the lich down. Nothing at all. Vengeance would be his. He swore it. Vengeance. It's a pleasure to finally speak without Savior face to face. Enri's Fatber offered him his hand. I'm Nathaniel. Naruto shook it with a sigh and resigned himself to playing the part for the time being. Nice to meet ya. And this is? Emma, my lord. Enri's mother sketched a clumsy bow before pivoting in place to gesture at a nearby home that evidently belonged to her family. Please be welcome. Won't you come inside? We weren't expecting guests, but we do have some stew brewing in the pot. Naruto knew better than to follow them into their happy little home, if only because he felt unworthy of it. He didn't belong here, he shouldn't be a god to these people, and he certainly wasn't worthy of being worshipped like this. Honestly, all this adoration was just making him uncomfortable. He'd begun making his excuses to depart, when the bundle in Emma's arms made a noise. Ah, Emma crooned, looking on it with a loving smile. Look! He's awake! Naruto stilled. He? Peering down into her arms, Naruto belatedly realized Enri's mother held a small child in her arms, a little blonde boy. Tiny fellow, though. Couldn't have been more than a year old at most. Wait a minute. Hasn't it been about a year since was here? But that means… This is Amaruk. Emma held up the swaddled babe for his inspection. Don't mind him, he's a bit of a sleepyhead. Eh? Stunned, Naruto peered down at the blonde baby, and to his great surprise, the little one blinked back up at him with bright red eyes. Strange, but not unusual in this world. What was strange was how calm said baby was. Here he stood, a perfect stranger looming over him, and the small fellow didn't bat an eyelash. He just stared. It was almost funny, really. Staring down at this not quite infant reminded him of happier days. His daughter Yui had been much the same when she was a baby, wholly and utterly without fear. Much like her, this runt didn't seem to mind him at all. The little bastard took one look at him and yawned without a care in the world. Emma preened as only a mother could. Isn't he handsome? He was born shortly after you left Karn village, my lord. While Naruto was still reeling from that revelation, Enri's father delivered another blow with a merry smile. Would you do us the honor of being his godfather? Naruto's brain blanked. Literally, he switched off. Complete and total shutdown. Lights are on, but nobody's home. In other words, dear reader. Thud. He passed out. One of his many passive skills kicked in a second later, jolting him back to consciousness with a violent lurch. Why am I staring at the sky? Belatedly, he became aware of several things at once, Ninu prodding his cheek for one, with Enri laying a hand on his forehead as the others crowded around him. Shame darkened his face and caused him to jolt up once more, idly batting their hands away in the process. He had the strangest feeling he was missing something terribly important here. Meh, if it was that important, he'd remember it sooner or later. For now, Archie and the others looked far too surprised for his liking. Perhaps they hadn't thought him the sort to faint. Why wouldn't he? After all, he was only human. Didn't stop him from shooting a bleak look Ein's way, though. The elder lich wasn't laughing at him per se, but he was absolutely radiating amusement at his plight, or at least he was, until his own passive clamped down and muffled his emotions once more, causing him to cough into a fist and look away. Are you all right? I'm fine. Naruto rasped sullenly, words slurring together in haste as he dragged himself to his feet. Just a little shocked. Exhaling harshly, he turned his gaze back to Enri's mother and father, each of whom were still looking to him expectantly despite his fainting spell just now. You honestly want me to be that kid's godfather? Their heads bobbed. Ninu seized his right hand and squeezed it between both of hers. Please? Gods, but her hands were so small compared to his, she couldn't. The swords of darkness were of no help. Ninya's group was entirely too busy fussing over a near catatonic Infiria, having all but precluded themselves from this conversation entirely. Narberal remained indifferent as ever, and Archaea, judging by her expression, she was all for it. Ainz didn't render any aid whatsoever. He offered only a mute shrug as though to say I warned you, and shoved the proverbial hot potato right back at him. Enri and Nimue meanwhile looked entirely too earnest, as though he could do no wrong in their eyes. Even the damn goblins were staring at him from the sidelines. Naruto felt his resolve waver. I don't know. Enri turned her earnest eyes upon him, forcing him to look away. Nimue squeezed his hand tight, pleading as only a child could. Please, please, please. You'd be the best godfather ever. Irk. What could he possibly say to that? Nothing. She reminded him entirely too much of Yui. And he was kinda curious about this red-eyed kid. He seemed unusual. Naruto dragged a hand down his face to hide his smile. All right. Nimue hopped in place, dragging his arm with her. Yay! Folded like a house of cards. Nice job, me. Splendid. Beaming, Emma looked to Archie, all smiles. And who might this be? Your wife? Archie squawked, arms flailing as Enri made unhappy noises. Me? His wife? I could never. I'm not worthy of being his bride. I see. Enri's father looked past them, looking quietly pleased for some reason. Lord Ainz wouldn't happen to be with you today, would he? Mom tensed behind him, broad shoulders gone rigid. Naruto froze for a moment, only a moment. And then a positively evil grin split his whiskered visage as he pivoted face grinned, reveling in the distress of his sudden player. Oh, you know Ainz, he's such a busy fellow. Always running about, I can never keep track of him. I swear, if I didn't know better, I'd say he's right behind me. Ha! 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 He audibly enunciated each ha just to drive the point home. What are the chances of that, right? Enri's family shared in his laughter, not understanding the pointed jab. If Ainz was gonna make him suffer, well, two could play that game. But hey, he spun, gestured broadly, grinned full of spite. This is my friend, Dark Warrior Mammon. Say hello? Ainz waved stiffly. Greetings. Enri's family bowed and made their respectful introductions of their own. And then Emma stepped on a landmine. Looking to Narberal, she made what to her seemed a reasonable assumption. Ah, but you must be Lady Obito. My, you look quite lovely without your armor. Narberal damn near choked on her own spit. Naruto nearly howled with laughter. That's right, Obito never took off her helmet while she was here. Only natural they'd assume Nabe was her. This oughta be fun. Sure enough, the Pleiades maid flew into a sputtering denial. Nonsense. I can't possibly compare to someone like Lad Obito. She'd flay me alive if I so much as glanced at our Lord's glorious body dash. Ainz yelped and clamped a hand over her mouth. What's gotten into you? Taking full advantage of the lull, Naruto happily steered the conversation in another direction he desired. I gotta ask though, he jerked a thumb over his shoulder. Who came up with the idea for the statue? Well, if you must know, Enri's father, Nathaniel, puffed up his chest, practically bursting with pride. I'm something of a stonemason myself, but the idea was all Enri. She was adamant we repay you somehow. Nimue hummed her agreement as she yanked on his hand. Big Sis said we had to, so we did. Is that so? Enri flushed under his stern look, but lifted her chin and didn't quail despite the gleam in his gaze. If anything, she blushed even deeper. Worse, Enri's parents looked as though they'd likely nothing more than to invite him inside. He knew that way lay disaster. Right, that settled it. This was going to be a problem. He absolutely needed to find a way to pair her up with Nympharia as soon as possible. If he didn't, he was going to end up with a bride at this rate. It took quite some time, Nathaniel ambled on, but since our daughter became the new chief, she wanted to make certain we got your likeness right. His right eye twitched. They got something all right. Emma hummed at his side, idly rocking baby Emmerich against her bosom. Little Bugger had already fallen asleep again, so she kept her voice low as not to wake him. We would have made one for Lord Irons, but no one quite remembered what he looked like with that mask of his and those thick gloves. Naruto could feel Irons sweating behind him, and thus grin gained an inch. Don't worry. I'll be happy to provide some pointers. As a matter of fact, he looks a great deal like. Come here for a second. His fellow player grabbed him by the arm and dragged him a few paces away. Naruto allowed it, unable to hide his smirk all the while. Ainz yanked him behind a building, red eyes gleaming through his helm as he shot a message spell at him. What are you doing? Payback's a bitch. He sneered back telepathically. If I have to deal with this, so do you. The elder lich bridled. I'd rather not. You're going to blow my cover wide open. And you threw my ass on the fire, so we're even. Go watch the villagers train then if you're this anxious. Momonga bridled, then surprised him by nodding. Very well. I'll do that. Perhaps you'll be less childish once you've had time to cool your head. His piece said, he pivoted on one heel and marched away. After a moment, Narberal made her less than subtle excuses and followed him. Naruto tooted. I didn't think he'd back down. Shaking his head, he looked back to Enri's parents. Still, this is an opportunity. Pivoting himself, he crossed both arms before his chest and favored Enri with a stern look. Enri, just how could you see through my disguise? From his high perch atop a high hill, Mammon and Nabe watched the people of Karn practice archery from afar. They're pretty good, the former remarked wistfully. Although he was still bristling a little from Naruto's little tantrum, there was something about the sight of these men and women, even the children, drilling together that calmed him. Despite all their trials and tribulations, nay, in spite of them, these people were determined to forge ahead. Karn village might not look like much now, but given time it could grow to rival the fortress city of Irantal. Narberal regarded them with a nonplussed expression. Is that so? Ainz glanced at her askance and sighed. While it's true their skill isn't amazing, only a short while ago, the people down there had never touched a bow. Their friends, children, and parents were murdered then brought back to life, all in less than a day. Now they work hard to never let such a thing happen again. We must admire them for that. When Narberal didn't answer, he began to sweat inwardly. Is she angry? Gah, she's really hard to read sometimes. Ahem. He coughed into a fist to ease his own nervous chuckle, something that was gradually becoming something of a nervous tic for him, much to his chagrin. Allow me to phrase it another way. Let us suppose for the sake of argument that the Pleiades were wiped out. Narberal rounded on him, eyes wide with alarm. Surely such a thing could never happen, my lord. Ainz beeped his helmeted head a fraction of an inch to the right. Yet wouldn't you want to be stronger, if only to never experience the sting of defeat again? Her face closed down in quiet contemplation. I'm terribly sorry. I did not think that deeply about it. He'd been doing an awful lot of that lately, thinking of things that shouldn't matter to most, but surely did to him. We cannot remain stagnant forever, Narberal. If I may ask a question? Ho? He looked to her, quietly pleased. How unlike you to take the initiative. My apologies. There's no need, he waved her on, carefully maintaining an air of feigned indifference. On the contrary, I approve. What did you want to ask? Narberal looked down the hill, her piercing gaze roaming past the intrepid archers, seeking out one blonde in particular. That woman, Archie. I wish to fight her. Ainz mentally pumped a fist. Yes. That was the reason I came up here in the first place. I was going to lead her to that, but she beat me to it. Outwardly, however, he struggled to muster up a calm facade. And why is that? Her lips pursed in a thin line. To test myself. She's learning after all. And prove that I am superior to that ant. Or not. Chuckling softly, he nodded his agreement. I'll inquire with Naruto. I'm sure she's just as eager to fight you. The people of Karn would enjoy observing such a bout. Sir Mammon. Together, they looked up as Nfiria came running up the hill. Seemed the lad had recovered from his fainting bout. He looked pale as a she. Ainz restrained a sigh. Do you have some business with me? The boy did, much to his chagrin. Today was full of surprises. More would come. A sudden explosion of light down in the village below caught his gaze, inadvertently drawing his eyes to a massive pillar of blazing blue light. How odd, it had come from Enri's home. Blasted the roof clean off her house, really. What have we here? Rivalries often bring about the best in us. All right, spill it. How could you see through my disguise? Enri squirmed in her seat before the table, hands clasped in her lap, stubbornly refusing to meet his eyes. It was the first outward display of defiance he'd seen from her upon his return. That alone told him he was on the right track. Why else would she be fidgeting so? Naruto, for his part, kept both arms crossed before his chest and stood his ground, footing tapping patiently upon the floor as he awaited her answer. He'd reluctantly consented entering her home if only to better interrogate her, but even then he had hoped she would tell the truth without much prodding on his part. Thus far she hadn't given in despite the prying of her family, but he could tell she was on the verge of a breakdown. She didn't disappoint him. The silence was suffocating. Enri's parents, Emma and Nathaniel, looked on with quiet curiosity. Little Emmerich dozed in his mother's arms, his eye kept straying the baby's way for reasons he couldn't understand, sound asleep while Nina played with her toys by the hearth. And then, quite suddenly, Enri erupted. I don't know. Sure enough, she flung up her arms with a dismayed cry, tears shining in her amber eyes. I just knew it was you. I can't explain it. My lord, Emma ventured, what does this mean? I'm not quite sure, really. Naruto thumbed his chin, considering the matter further. I gave her and Nimu a blessing to protect them before I left, but that should have worn off by now. His eyes narrowed further, using his own talent to discern if there were any lingering effects. Much to his surprise, he found something far greater instead. Let's see, Kurama would have laughed at him if he were awake. All-seeing eye, Naruto sighed under his breath. Well, that talent of yours would explain a few things. Enri sat up straight. I have a talent? He nodded. A powerful one. Enri gasped as her parents preened. Really? What does it do? He told her in no uncertain terms. Evidently it let her see through illusions and falsehoods at the very least. She'd pierced his disguise without even realizing it at first. He was tempted to run some tests, Anko certainly would, but didn't want to frighten her any more than he already had. Moreover, he was concerned. Was he able to give talents to others in the form of blessings, or had hers merely awakened as a result of stress? He wasn't sure which, but one of those was more concerning than the other. Still, it didn't change the fact that she clearly had one. And speaking of facts. Oh! Nini sprang to her feet, all but bouncing in place. Check me. Me. Do I have an awesome talent too? He turned his gaze on her and immediately blanched. Lady of the Heavens. Description error. Oh, and now. That sounded like an awfully dangerous talent for a kid to have. Especially if he couldn't read it. Coughing into a fist, quickly looked away. Not exactly like your sisters. Nemia sulked. Everybody panic. Don't be like that. Look! I got you a gift! It was like flicking a switch. Nimia's attitude pulled a 180. Her eyes practically sparkled as she clasped both hands before her little face as danced a little circle on the spot, thrilled. You did? He fumbled in his coat for something he could safely give to a small child and happened upon something glossy and smooth. Right. The crystal he'd taken off Nigan's corpse. He hadn't thought much of the man and his so-called sunlight scripture before, so he hadn't given him the chance to use it, but neither had he gotten rid of it either. Surely it was safe. Girls like shiny gems, right? He was a bit out of practice on that front, but surely it couldn't hurt. He offered it to her. Here you go, kiddo. Nimue accepted it with a giddy squeal. Oh, shiny! The moment it touched her hands, everything exploded. Naruto's heart jolted at the sight. All around him Enri's cottage, humble and sturdy, was abruptly and inexplicably engulfed in a blinding blue column of light. Dust and splintered wood rained around it. He heard the frightened cries of Nimue and Enri, and without a second conjured a barrier to protect them and their family alike. The shockwave struck him a moment later, launching him outside. He hit the ground, tumbled once, and leapt back toward the still smoldering, each bound of his legs covering incredible ground. He scarcely noticed the crunch of his own feet on the gravel as he sprinted. No time to waste. Belatedly, he noticed others following behind him, descending from the hill above with speed. The tall armored figure of Mammon, Ain's old gown's disguised simulacrum, crushed cobblestones with heavy steps, and Narberal Gamma flew low through the air like a shadowed hawk, wings tattered but undiminished. The speed of his own return left them momentarily behind, but in moments they were right at the house, bursting through the rear door into a scene of chaos. Enri and her family were quite all right, startled perhaps, but otherwise unharmed. His barrier had seen to that. The newcomer, that is to say, the entity that had erupted from the crystal, was not. The interior of the cottage was dark. The explosion had blown away a large section of roof, and sunlight spilled through jagged holes. Splinters of wood and shards of pottery lay strewn about. In the center of the room, amidst the haze and the dust, a pale figure hovered, robed in supernatural splendor. At a glance she appeared to be a small girl, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, but with a supernatural stillness. She had unnaturally white hair, eyes that shone gold, and delicate wings of light folded behind her, golden sigils swirling around her. In one hand she brandished a slender staff topped with a vertical gold, in the other a curved horn of pure light dangled freely. A strange, ancient name slipped through Naruto's mind before he even spoke. Free at last. The being spread her arms wide, pale visage inclined toward the heavens. Hear me, world! Now dawns thy reckoning, and thy gore shall glisten before the temples of man. Silence reigned supreme. The holy entity inclined her head towards him, noticing him at last. Creature of flesh, my gratitude upon thee for my freedom. But the crimes thy kind have committed against mine are not forgotten. A hand rose imperiously towards him, pale finger crooked in benediction, or perhaps perdition, he didn't know which. And thy punishment is death. What, just death? A bemused chuckle fled from his lips. You'll have to try a little harder than that if you want to frighten me. She stomped a foot. I am Dominion Authority. Fear me. Whatever you say, runt. I am not a runt. You look like a child to me. She did indeed, this little waif child with her pale complexion and irritable demeanor. Nothing could convince him otherwise. The little girl pointed at him imperiously, her voice echoing as though speaking in a vast stone hall. O mortal, she intoned, Dominion Authority commands thee. By the blood of creation, thou shalt perish. All right, entertaining as this is, she's scaring the kiddos. Naruto rounded on her instantly, fists clenching. The youngster looked nothing like a monster, but he knew well enough what she was. This was Dominion Authority, an angel sealed within a crystal, likely meant to be used as some trump card by Nigan, or so she had been, before her master had been brutally slaughtered. No idea why she'd taken on human form, but it changed nothing. She was, insofar as he was concerned, just as weak in this humanoid body as she would have been in her true form. In other words, not a threat. Ainz and Narberal arrived, but it was the former who hummed in surprise behind his helm. And here I thought it was a Seraph Empyrean, he mumbled, head beeped. Not a mere Dominion authority. Shall I deal with her? Nah, I got it. Naruto threw up a hand dismissively as he approached the floating child. Look, runt, he drawled, matching the girl's golden gaze with blue. This is cute and all, but you're supposed to be a gift for Enri. So if you just quiet down and go back into your crystal. Stop calling me that, the girl objected, voice strangely echoing with power. And I am not some mere djinn to be bandied about. Aren't you? The Dominion blinked, folding her arms, as her mouth curled into a snarl, though her face remained that of a petulant child. Creature of flesh, thy crimes against mankind shall not go unpunished. I shall carve thy soul from your body. Whoa, hey. Naruto held up a hand. Talk about overkill. I gave a gift, and this is the thanks I get? He shot a warning glance at Enri and Nimue, gathered behind him, eyes wide. From there he lightly stepped between the girl and the kids. Listen, he said, lowering his voice so only they would hear. Remember earlier, Enri? I asked how you saw through my disguise. You told me your talent was the all-seeing eye, right? You can see the truth behind any illusion. He paused, catching her eye. That's some serious gift. I wasn't kidding when I said it was powerful. Enri's cheeks flushed at the praise, her golden eyes shimmering with pride. She nodded eagerly. Nimue bounced with excitement behind her older sister, clapping her hands. Kids, just kids, Naruto thought, forcing himself to be gentle despite the looming threat. He forced a grin. You both have some pretty amazing talents. Enri's got the sharpest I've seen, nothing gets past her. And Nimue. He put a hand on her shoulder. I'm thinking that talent of yours might have something to do with our angelic friend here. Dominion authority raged in the background impotently. I am no friend of thine. Nimue's lip quivered a little. Before Naruto could say more, he heard a cough behind him. Ainz, in Mamon's helm, gestured to the ceiling crystal, presently discarded upon the floor in the chaos. Realizing the danger of delaying, he quickly retrieved up the glossy object. Much to his chagrin, the crystal had started to hum, and a faint light glowed at its surface. Wait. That talent of Nimue's. A mad idea dawned in the depths of his mind. Nimue's face had fallen again, and now she looked up with shiny eyes and said, Naruto, can I still have a gift? The little girl's voice quivered with hope. Naruto shook the crystal in his palm. Right. Sure, kiddo. Before his mind could further protest, he held the crystal back out to Nimue. The instant it passed into her hands, Dominion authority shrieked furiously. No! I shan't submit to her! Before the angel could release more screaming, Naruto stepped. In a blur, he drove Rasengan at her torso from midair. The vortex of chakra swirled in his palm. With a simple flick of his wrist he sent it rocketing at her. The Dominion bellowed and thrust her hand forward, but the Rasengan struck her at knee height. The child screamed in pain as she was unceremoniously flung backwards, skidding across the shattered floor and slamming through the wooden wall of the house. Dirt and bricks exploded behind her as she disappeared outside. Enri gasped. Nimue squeezed Naruto's side until he patted her head and bid her let go, and bounded out after the fallen angel. Like I said, Naruto muttered over his shoulder as he landed softly among the rubble. You're a runt. Maybe if you were a proper seraph, this might be a challenge for me. The little Dominion, he couldn't help but nickname her that, bristled indignantly as she dragged herself upright. As he looked on, she summoned a gale of wind to try and blast him from his feet, but he simply bulldozed through it and backhanded her. The Dominion stumbled up from the ground, shaken and puffing out heavenward from the dust. She waved her staff in furious circles, summoning burning symbols in the air. Holy smite! Naruto actually winced as a wave of superheated air slammed down on him, melting dirt at his feet. Huh! Actual pain. Not much, but just enough to annoy him. A hint of concern flashed across his eyes. He had promised to destroy a certain prince, and momentarily thought the Dominion might wreak havoc on Enri's goblins in the distance. Ainz and Narberal arrived at his side, the latter of whom flicked a foul glance his way. You simply can't help but cause chaos, can you? He winked her way. Are you worried about me? She whacked his leg with her sheathed sword. In your dreams. Ainz chuckled under his helm behind him. Quite. I hadn't expected to see an actual Dominion this morning. You played that perfectly, Naruto. If you hadn't given little Nemia that gem. As if I planned this. Naruto shot him a warning glance. Hey, you said it would be fine. Not my fault you let me keep that thing. Ainz feigned innocence. I merely had an inkling something might happen. If you weren't famous before, you certainly are now. You just unleashed an angel. Fantastic. Naruto flicked a rock with his foot, scowling at the Dominion. The little girl had regained her feet but was now concentrating, drawing deep from some well of power. She stomped the ground and roared, Azago Vijra Shuna. Let thy light be my voice. Golden runes etched themselves onto the right horn on her head as it began to bleed radiant light. What on earth was she doing? Whatever it was, it didn't look good. Already could feel the air growing heavier, more oppressive. Naruto tried to recall lore. The staff with two horns, he remembered something from one of the tomes he'd pilfered Nigen's off Nigen's body. This magic was a higher tier than the last, and he'd no intention of taking a blast like that head on. Nemia's voice rose behind him in a pained cry. No more fighting. The Dominion authority flinched. Naruto pounced. Before the angel could pronounce whatever doom-bringing spell was on her tongue, he dashed forward like a shadow, his black staff flashing in the sun. Holding a palm toward the Dominion authority's chin, he unleashed a shockwave of compressed wind. The blast struck her squarely. The light wound around her like a living serpent. The Dominion howled in pain, and abruptly the sigils shattered. With a final scream, the luminous figure collapsed in a heap of feathers and smoke. Naruto leveled his fighting stance, studying her. The small creature lay motionless, recovering from the blow. Her spell was extinguished now, shattered shards of light falling to the ground. He remained ready for any sign of movement, but the Dominion, it seemed, was spent. A silence hung in the air. For a moment, even the birds ceased their chirping, as if hearing nothing at all. Naruto scowled, expecting some threat. But the girl blinked dazedly, then shook her head. Her rigid posture softened, and much to his chagrin, she had up on her knees to gaze upon him with equal parts fury and awe. I cannot believe it! Her voice trembled with fearful trepidation as he looked. O mortal, thou hast bested me. Naruto simply crossed his arms. In the same voice that felt as if it echoed through cathedrals, he replied, Did you expect anything less? She glared away from him, glaring daggers at Nemu, who still held tight to her sealing crystal. You had assistance from that mortal. Were it not for her, thou wouldst have been burned to ash. Yeah, right. He hefted his staff, ready to finish what he started. The Dominion authority saw the gleam in his eyes and squeaked, abandoning her bravado as she pressed her head into the dirt. Have mercy! I'll serve the child. Please, please, please. Gotcha. Seemed these angels weren't so high and mighty once you batted them about a bit. Do you swear? She nodded furiously into the ground. I swear on the light. May the Serpa bear witness. Hook, line, and sinker. That was what he'd been aiming for. Good girl. So speaking, he thumped her over the head, knocking her out. Ainz and Narberal rushed up behind him. Mammon cleared his throat, rustling the red cape over his armor. Well, anyway, that was unexpected. He looked at Naruto with quiet curiosity. What just happened out there? Naruto shrugged, lowering his blade but still watching the Dominion carefully. Clobbered her, that's all. Then took a nap. Archie, who had been walking toward them with Nfiria a few paces behind, put a hand on her head to protect herself from the falling dust. She frowned, impressed. That girl is something else. Most wouldn't survive her release. Naruto gave a half-chuckle. She's done. Easy. He wiped his blade clean on the ground and closed his eyes briefly. "'S'all good," he added with a grin. "Nini got her gift, and a new friend besides. I'd call that a day." Henry's sister squealed in the background. "I can keep her?" Narberal tooted in relief. "Unbelievable. I actually thought we were in trouble." Ains nodded slowly. "You handled it well. No harm done." Naruto scoffed. "Har har. Dominion authority. More like dominant embarrassment authority." Ains pinched the bridge of his helm. "Try to keep it down, please." In the calm that returned, Naruto glanced back at Nimue. The little girl had her palms clasped together, and wide eyes glittering. She was grinning the biggest grin he had ever seen on her. Ains made a playful face, but Naruto just smiled and brought himself down from his battle stance. He held out a hand to Nimue and patted her head. "There you go, kiddo, nothing to fear now." Here, with a flick of his wrist, he cast Dominion Authority's unconscious form at her, forcing the smaller girl to catch her. "Have fun with your new friend." Nimue's eyes lit up as she accepted it. Best big brother ever. Irk. Critical damage. Naruto knelt and ruffled her hair. "Easy there, Turbo. We almost had a disaster. Keep her safe, okay? And promise not to bring her out unless it's an emergency, alright?" Nimue nodded earnestly. "Yes, sir." To Henry, Naruto offered a reassuring grin. "Aren't we brave? You two are practically warrior heroes now, seeing me beat down a proper angel and all that." Henry's eyes twinkled. "My lord, you were amazing. The way you just swirled and created that energy ball thing, and leapt. It was like something out of a legend." Naruto scratched the back of his head, a sheepish smile tugging at his lips. "Huh, thanks. I learned that trick by accident. Everybody's got their shtick, right?" Naruto had almost forgotten to check Nimue, still clutching the gem. He turned briefly to ensure the little Emot was okay. She perched on a stone, still staring wide-eyed at the crystal, oblivious. Naruto shook his head fondly. Kids these days. Always so innocent. Behind them, the villagers of Karn had begun to gather, drawn by the light show. Mothers were gathering up their smaller children, eyes full of awe and maybe a bit of fear. But when they saw Momon, Narberal, and Naruto unharmed, some began to cheer and clap politely. Others just stared, mouths agape at the sight of tame Dominion in their midst. Ains rolled his shoulders. "Well," he said with a faint cough, "any objections if we put on a show? The people here could use a distraction." Naruto quirked a blonde brow. "A show, you say? What, you want to spar in front of the village or something?" He wouldn't be opposed to the idea per se, but... Not quite. The elder lich nodded, red eyes gleaming within his helm. It was Nabe's idea. Now it was his turn to tilt his head. "Whatcha mean, then?" Narberal perked up behind him, faltering but only for a moment. Then she rounded on Archie, finger thrust at the younger mage. "You there! Insect!" Archie touched a finger to her chin, wearing a small smile Naruto had only seen once before in his long life. "Are you addressing me, perchance?" "Yes, you." She lifted her chin, staring her down. "I demand a duel. Here and now. Unless you're too much of a coward to face me?" Archie's grin grew. It was not a nice grin. "Too many teeth. I accept." Naruto slapped a palm to his forehead. You've done it now. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story. And also don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.